The well-known mangaka that has written Fuka and Suzuka has brought us this wonderful series, Half and Half. It's a mini-series that has been recommended to me quite often. I mean, not that much, but it has been recommended to me. And if Chibi's known me by now, I love reading things that are romance in general. Like, I love romance series, and I love reviewing things that are not really that well-known. Things that are hidden, or not many people have heard about. Because, at the end of the day, I try to showcase certain series that not many really know about. And I do know, at this time, the mangaka Seo-sensei that writes Fuka at this moment, I think it's an ongoing romance series. I haven't read the series myself, I haven't read Fuka, so I don't really know the main premise of it, but I do know the mangaka is really well known for that series. And if you like that mangaka's work, I'm going to say right now, the series I am reviewing in this video, Half and Half, is also the mangaka's work that just recently finished on May 9th, 2015. So, this is going to be a recommendation slash review. Now, I want to give my final thoughts on the series, but that'll be for the later half of this video. First things first, I want to give my recommendation on the series, just talk about the premise and, the setup, and it's kind of be spoiler-free. It's going to be like spoiler-free this first half of this video, and then get into spoiler territory on the second half, which I will warn you about. So, Half and Half. The premise, the story, the characters. The main story of the series is to where a male and a female, they have an unlucky circumstance to where they both die at the exact same time. And at the act of them both dying at the exact same time, God descends upon them and says, one of you must die in 7 days. I'm giving you an extension to your life. For 7 days, in 7 days, one of you make a choice to choose who lives and who dies. And that is the plot of this series, Half and Half. One has to choose to live or die, and God told him to do that. And of course, right off the bat, I mean, if you both died at the exact same time, and you were given another chance, you're most likely not going to go down without a fight. Like, you don't want to die. Majority of people just do not want to die. They want to live on, and, I mean, if they're given that chance, they want to live on. So, you can already see some drama, how drama could be focused around this entire element of the series, with how one of them has to die. But this is where it gets very tricky, and what makes the series very compelling and unique, and what drove me to continue reading this in one sitting. I read Half and Half in one sitting. It was really that good. When I sat down to read Chapter 1, I finished it. I read from Chapter 1 to Chapter 13, and I was done. I was fucking done, because it was so good. It was a really good story. I mean, it has its flaws, which I will get into in the review part, but the emotions and the feelings of the characters are linked. And this leads into some more of the quirky drama and comedy of the series. For instance, as majority of you probably already thought by now, if the characters are being forced to choose who lives or who dies in these 7 days, most likely the characters might try to come after each other to where they might kill each other. And with that, that kind of negates that. It's thrown out the window. So it's like these characters have to come together and try to have a mutual understanding, because the emotions and pain and feelings they feel at that time. For instance, let's say I was linked with this person, okay, and I was in this situation. I was linked with this girl, and she slapped me. She slapped me on the fucking face. Really fucking hard, like it was a bitch slap. And all of a sudden, she would feel that pain too. And that's the situation our two characters, Yuki and Shinichi, are in. They share pain, and they also share emotions and feelings. So let's say if I had deep guilt, if I was feeling deep guilt or deep sadness, I got so much sadness right now and I had feels, that would mean the person that's connected to me, for instance, the girl, would also feel the exact same emotions I felt. And so there would become some mutual understanding between the two parties. And so that's what really sets up the theme and atmosphere of the series, like the premise. That's what the series is about. And now that I've said that, let's get into the review. So I'm getting into spoilers, and 3, 2, 1, start. Okay, now I'm in spoiler territory. So if you've yet to read the series and you still want to go read it, go read it. If you don't give a shit and you want to continue on, well, I'm about to spoil you. So that ending, that's something I really want to talk about, okay? That's the main beef, what this review is going to be about. It's just talking about that damn ending. That's something I really want to talk about. Predictable, but not predictable at the exact same time. That ending, it has its issues. Like, the series has its issues. I have to admit, it's a good series. It's very entertaining. I read it in one sit down. I just sat down and read it in one read. Like, it was that good. But it does have its issues, and I see the issues clearly. The biggest issue I think Half and Half has as a series is the time constraint. I wish the series would have been longer. honestly. There was a lot of potential in this series, a lot to work with. Like, there's a lot of lost potential in some of these things, these themes that the series could have continued on to flesh out. Like, the emotions being shared and, the feelings and so many other situations with different drama that the series could have led at. It could have made a very compelling romance series that would have been very different from any other thing I have ever seen from a romance, and I felt like that was lost potential, and that comes down to the time constraint. This is only 13 chapters as a series, and 13 chapters sometimes, like 13 chapter series can be very good or bad. It depends on how it's done. Now, necessarily just because I say this series has time constraints doesn't mean it's bad. It's a good series, and it has a very solid conclusion. I'm satisfied with the conclusion, but there could have been so much like more to the series. And another thing to the time constraint, see, there's only 7 days. The characters only have 7 days to live, and it would have been a lot better if the characters maybe have had a month to live or 2 months to live, because if you would have added that on, there would have been a lot more room for character development and activities for the characters to express themselves to get us to grow to them a lot more. But at the end of the day, the characters actually did mature and get characterization very early on. Like, at first, they seemed very cliche. Like, the characters' makeup as a structure of a character, they were one-dimensional at first. They just seemed standard cliche romance characters. And then as the series got to, like, around chapter 6 to 7, that's when you really started growing connected with the characters, and the characterization went full circle, and you could really understand what was going on. And so the characters, at the end of the day, I felt like they were very satisfying. Like, there's not really anything wrong I could say with the characters. I mean, their overall decisions and what they chose at the end of the series, I felt like it was a proper way to go, because there is a thing I think majority that were probably reading this series missed. And I don't know if I'm the only one to notice it, because I haven't looked up anything on this series. I'm just doing my raw thoughts after just finishing it. But I noticed it after I finished the last chapter, that there was something that stood out to me. Majority of readers of Half and Half are going to look at that ending with the child from Yuki that was born as if it was a reincarnation of Shinichi. That's what majority, even I, usually would look at that ending segment at. Like, you would think the MC got resurrected into his child. That's what you'd think. But it's actually not like that. It's a little bit more complicated. In the scene to where Yuki is about to die, and, God's taking her up and all that, you hear a voice. This voice says, "I don't want to die." And you see, specifically in certain panels throughout the manga, in certain chapters, you see it to where you hear a voice like you too, like you hear the second voice, like Shinichi hears a second voice. And in that scene, when, that voice pops up, it was actually Shinichi and Yuki's child saying it doesn't want to die. And so Shinichi sacrificed himself not just for his lover, Yuki, he sacrificed himself for his unborn child. And that negates the reincarnation right there. So Shinichi did not reincarnate. He is dead. He is dead as dead can be. He's fucking dead. But his son lives on. And so does Yuki. And with that, it's a very bittersweet ending that can leave some very sad and upset. Maybe some will say it's a meh ending. I could see why. I can understand why some would say it's a meh ending, because it's nothing spectacular, like, oh my god, it's fucking 10 out of 10. It's not. But it was fun. I don't regret sitting down and actually reading this for about an hour and a half. I don't regret sitting down and reading this. Like, it was fun. I took my time with it as I was reading it. I mean, it's just fun. And if you're looking for a good romance series to, go read, and you want something a little bit different from normal, you might like this. One day I hope we get a little bit of an OVA of this series. I mean, there is nudity. Oh yeah, I need to mention that. There is nudity in this series, so if you are affected by nudity, I don't recommend you, going to read this, because there is nudity. But if you can get past that, it's a series I would recommend. Yeah, it's fun. If I had to rate it, this is my first time I think I've ever encountered this mangaka's work, Seo Sensei's work. I've never read Fuka or Suzuka. I have the anime Suzuka, but I never read, actually watched, I was going to say read. I've never watched the anime of Suzuka. I've been told not to. And I've never gotten around to reading Fuka or Suzuka. I know they're linked together. And so I've never really seen the previous works of this mangaka. This is actually my first encounter with this mangaka's work. And I have to say, for this read, it actually interests me in wanting to read this mangaka's other work just for this story alone. This story was very different from what I normally see. And getting back on point, what would I rate it? I don't necessarily want to say it's a 7. I would give this... I don't know. With entertainment and forcing me to sit down and read it in one sitting. Like, I actually sat down and read this in one sitting, and it's rare for something to do that to me, where I just want to sit down and read something in just one entire sitting. I would say I would give this a solid 8. 8 out of 10. Yeah, 8 out of 10. It has its flaws. I know it does. I've already pointed those out. It's time constraints. That's the biggest flaws. There was so much more could have been done, but regardless of that, I had fun. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you've read this series, what is your thoughts on the ending? How do you feel about the conclusion? Do you feel like Yuki should have died instead? Or do you think it was right for, you know, our MC to die for his unborn child and his girlfriend? Or I guess you can kind of consider wife. Let me know your thoughts. You all have a wonderful day or not, wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.